It was 3 a.m. when the car pulled away from Royal Lodge. No press, no announcement, no cameras rolling, just darkness and silence. For over 20 years, Prince Andrew called this 30-room mansion home. But on this night, everything changed. Because the prince wasn't leaving for a holiday. He wasn't going to a royal engagement. This is the story of how a man born into ultimate privilege lost everything, and why he had to slip away like a thief in the night from the only home he'd known. But before we dive into that fateful night, you need to understand something. This wasn't just about a house. This was about power, about reputation, about a family secret that the royal family desperately wanted to bury. And it all started to unravel on one November night in 2019, when Andrew sat down for what would become the most disastrous interview in royal history. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To truly understand why Andrew left Royal Lodge in the dead of night, we need to go back to where it all began. Andrew Albert Christian Edward, born February 19, 1960, the third child and second son of Queen Elizabeth II. Unlike his older brother Charles, Andrew wasn't burdened with the weight of the crown. He was free, charismatic, handsome. The press called him Randy Andy because of his playboy lifestyle. He served in the Falklands War as a helicopter pilot, a genuine war hero. He married Sarah Ferguson in a fairy tale wedding watched by millions. They had 2 daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie. But then, the marriage fell apart. The scandals began, and Andrew made a friend, a very dangerous friend. His name was Jeffrey Epstein, a billionaire financier with connections to the world's most powerful people. And on the surface, he seemed like just another wealthy friend in Andrew's elite social circle. But Jeffrey Epstein was hiding something horrific. In 2008, Epstein was convicted of soliciting prostitution from a minor. He was a registered sex offender. And yet, Andrew didn't cut ties. In 2010, 2 years after Epstein's conviction, Andrew was photographed with him in New York Central Park. The prince claimed he was there to end the friendship. But the damage was done. Questions started being asked. Where else had Andrew been? Who else had he met? And then, a woman came forward. Her name was Virginia Giuffre, and she had a story that would shake the British monarchy to its core. Giuffre alleged that she had been trafficked by Epstein and forced to have sexual encounters with Prince Andrew when she was just 17 years old. She even had a photograph, Andrew with his arm around her waist, Ghislaine Maxwell smiling in the background. Andrew denied everything. He said he didn't remember meeting her. He questioned the authenticity of the photo. For years, the story simmered. But in August 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his prison cell, officially ruled a suicide. And suddenly, the spotlight turned fully onto Prince Andrew. The pressure was mounting. The questions were getting louder. And Andrew made a decision that would seal his fate. He agreed to an interview with BBC Newsnight. November 16, 2019. Emily Maitlis sat across from the prince in Buckingham Palace. The cameras rolled. Andrew claimed he couldn't have been with Giuffre on the night she alleged because he was at a Pizza Express in Woking with his daughter. He said he couldn't sweat due to a medical condition from the Falklands War, contradicting Giuffre's description of him sweating profusely. He showed no empathy for Epstein's victims. He seemed more concerned about his own reputation than the suffering of young girls. The interview was supposed to clear his name. Instead, it destroyed him. Charities and organizations cut ties with Andrew. Universities revoked his honorary degrees. Corporate sponsors fled. And then came the biggest blow of all. January 2022. Queen Elizabeth II, his own mother, stripped Andrew of his military titles and royal patronages. He could no longer use the title His Royal Highness in any official capacity. The Queen was 95 years old. In the twilight of her reign, she had to publicly humiliate her own son to protect the monarchy. But Andrew still had one thing left. Royal Lodge. This wasn't just any property. This was a Grade II listed mansion with 30 rooms, 90 acres of grounds, and a history dating back to the 17th century. The Queen Mother had lived there. It was a symbol of royal status. When Queen Elizabeth died in September 2022, Charles became king. And he had a vision, a slimmed-down, modern monarchy. There was no room for scandal. No room for Andrew. Charles wanted Andrew out of Royal Lodge. He offered him Frogmore Cottage, the much smaller home that Harry and Meghan had vacated. For months, it was a standoff. Brother against brother. The king against the disgraced prince. Charles reportedly stopped funding Andrew's security, costs that ran into millions of pounds annually. He cut his allowance. The pressure was immense. But Andrew dug in. He loved Royal Lodge. It was all he had left. And then came that night. The night Andrew finally left. No official statement. No press release. Just whispers and rumors that began to spread. The British public had been watching this drama unfold for years. And when news broke that Andrew had left Royal Lodge in the middle of the night, the reactions were explosive. Some felt satisfaction. Justice, they said. A man who brought shame to the country finally facing consequences. Others felt it was too little, too late. Why did it take so long? Why did he get to stay in luxury for years while his reputation was in tatters? A small minority felt sympathy. They saw a man who had lost everything. His mother, his reputation, his home. A tragic fall from grace. But perhaps the most telling reaction came from Buckingham Palace itself. No comment. No acknowledgement. As if Prince Andrew had simply vanished. But let's pause for a moment. Because beyond the headlines and the scandals, there's a human story here. Andrew has two daughters who love him. Beatrice and Eugenie have stood by their father, even as the world turned against him. His ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, still lives with him, a strange but enduring relationship that has lasted decades beyond their divorce. Imagine being born into royalty. Your grandmother is the queen. You serve your country in war. You walk red carpets with presidents and movie stars. Your titles are stripped. Your friends abandon you. Your own family forces you from your home in the dead of night. The answer, perhaps, depends on what you believe Andrew did. And that's a question that may never be fully answered. Because Andrew settled the civil case against him. He paid Virginia Giuffre an undisclosed sum, reported to be around £12 million, without admitting guilt. Reports suggest he's moved to Frogmore Cottage, the very property he fought so hard not to accept. A 5-bedroom home, modest by royal standards. A massive downgrade from Royal Lodge. Some sources say he's not even staying there permanently. That he's been seen coming and going at odd hours. That he's living a fractured, nomadic existence. Bouncing between properties, never quite settling. Others whisper that Sarah Ferguson is still supporting him financially. That he's surviving on her income and what little money he has left. Will King Charles ever allow Andrew back into public life? Will there be some quiet rehabilitation years from now when memories have faded? Or is this it? Is Andrew doomed to live the rest of his life in the shadows? A cautionary tale about power, privilege, and the price of scandal? And here's the thing that should keep us all thinking. Andrew's story isn't just about one man. It's about accountability. It's about whether people in power truly face consequences for their actions. Because for every Andrew who falls, how many others never do? How many secrets are still being kept? How many midnight escapes have we never heard about? Royal Lodge stands empty now. The lights are off. The gates are closed. But the questions remain. And somewhere in the darkness, a disgraced prince is trying to figure out what comes after you've lost everything. Meanwhile, publicly, Sarah was giving interviews about how protective she was, how she would do anything for her daughters, how being a mother was her greatest achievement. "I will always protect my girls," she said in a 2011 interview, the same period when these emails were allegedly being sent. Imagine being Princess Eugenie, a teenager dealing with normal teenage things, school, friends, growing up in the public eye. You trust your mother completely. And then, decades later, you discover that your mother was allegedly describing you to Jeffrey Epstein in inappropriate ways. The psychological damage from this kind of parental betrayal can be catastrophic, a trauma specialist explained. Your mother is supposed to be your safe harbor. When she becomes the source of danger, even potential danger, it shatters your fundamental sense of safety in the world. Some defenders of Sarah Ferguson have suggested that her financial desperation made her vulnerable to Epstein's manipulation, that he paid off her debts specifically to gain this kind of access and information. Financial problems do not excuse putting your child at risk, one child welfare advocate stated firmly. There is no amount of debt, no level of desperation, that makes it acceptable to provide a predator with information about your teenage daughter. None. Throughout history, there have been cases of mothers who facilitated abuse, some knowingly, some through willful ignorance. Ghislaine Maxwell herself has been described as a mother figure who recruited young women for Epstein. But those women weren't the victim's actual mothers. This is different. This crosses a line that most people find incomprehensible. Sarah Ferguson has not publicly commented on the specific contents of these emails. Her representatives have offered no statement, no explanation, no apology. Neither Princess Beatrice nor Princess Eugenie has spoken about the revelations. Royal protocol keeps them quiet, but sources close to the family paint a picture of absolute devastation. Eugenie is beyond hurt, one royal correspondent reported, citing palace sources. She spent years defending both her parents, standing by her father through his scandals, supporting her mother through her struggles. And now this. And this is how that loyalty is rewarded. Discovering that her mother allegedly made inappropriate comments about her to a sexual predator. Sources suggest that Eugenie has significantly reduced contact with her mother since the emails came to light, that she's seeking therapy to process the betrayal, that she's questioning everything about her childhood and adolescence. She's asking herself, what else don't I know? What other conversations happened? Was I ever in actual danger because of my mother's judgment? One source close to the princess revealed, Princess Beatrice is in an impossible position. She's the older sister, the one who has always tried to keep the family together. But how do you reconcile something like this? The royal family, King Charles, Prince William, the palace machinery, has maintained icy silence on the matter. But privately, sources say there's fury. Sarah Ferguson has always been an embarrassment to the family, one royal biographer explained. But this is beyond embarrassment. This potentially endangered a royal princess. That's unforgivable. But there's been an overwhelming outpouring of support for Princess Eugenie. #IStandWithEugenie trended for days. Survivors of parental betrayal shared their own stories, expressing solidarity. Mental health advocates offered resources. One viral tweet captured the sentiment. Eugenie survived being a teenager in the spotlight. She survived her father's scandals. And now she has to survive discovering her mother's betrayal. This woman deserves peace. The Sarah Ferguson emails reveal something larger and more disturbing than one mother's catastrophic lapse in judgment. They show how Jeffrey Epstein operated, how he infiltrated families, how he gained access to the next generation of young women. Epstein cultivated relationships with many wealthy and powerful people who had teenage daughters. The documents suggest he asked similar questions of other parents, questions about their daughters' ages, appearances, activities, schools. Child safety experts have used this case to educate parents on warning signs. Predators specifically target financially vulnerable families, one expert explained. They know that desperation can cloud judgment. They offer help that seems innocent but comes with strings attached. Sarah Ferguson's debt, £15,000, wasn't enormous by billionaire standards. But Epstein knew it was enormous to her. He knew she was desperate, and he exploited that. Mothers are typically the primary gatekeepers in families, a family therapist explained. When a predator can compromise the mother through manipulation, financial dependence, or grooming, they gain access to the entire family. Survivor organizations have called for more unsealing of documents, arguing that families have a right to know if their children were discussed in Epstein's circles. There may be other daughters, other children, whose parents provided information to Epstein, one advocate stated. Those families deserve to know the truth. Sarah Ferguson spent decades building a reputation as the fun mom, the protective mother, the duchess who put her daughters above everything, even her relationship with the royal family. But these emails, if the reports are accurate, reveal a different story. A story of a woman so desperate for money and relevance that she allegedly compromised her own daughter's safety. A story of a mother who knew, absolutely knew, that Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted predator of teenage girls and still maintained contact with him. A story of inappropriate comments, detailed information, and a betrayal that cuts deeper than any scandal that came before. Princess Eugenie is 34 years old now. She's a mother herself. She's built a life independent of royal drama. She's survived scandals that would have destroyed others. But this is the kind of wound that may never fully heal. And here's what keeps everyone awake at night. These emails are just what's been unsealed so far. There are thousands more pages of Epstein-related documents still sealed. What else is in there? What other conversations happened? How many other families were compromised? Every parent makes mistakes. Every family has regrets. But there are some lines that should never be crossed. Some betrayals that are unforgivable. And providing a sexual predator with information about your teenage daughter, especially when you know exactly who and what he is. Sarah Ferguson may have thought she was just maintaining a useful connection, just keeping a wealthy benefactor happy, just surviving her financial crisis. But she was playing with fire, and her daughter got burned.